it stomps out a lot of that stuff. But I disagree with Republicans because they stand up for the system of law enforcement and the judicial branch, putting people in jail. And
as an absolute, yep.
And I've been through the court systems, and it does not work very well. And what makes me so mad is about the left is they say, now, I'm not a criminal anymore. They say, this is a white person, and they say, you're not in trouble because you're white. The left screams so loud how the justice system doesn't work because it's destroying minorities. And I'm thinking, that's not how it works. When a person who is poor goes through that system, that's who it's not fair for, not minorities. So being a person who was a young white criminal, I had no advantage over any black or Hispanic criminal. We were all criminals. And that's why I get more mad at the left when they start talking about how the justice system doesn't work, because they make it racial and they make it biased and divisive. And the Republicans real strong on law enforcement, and the police on the streets to me had too much power, even more than the judge. The police can catch you with a bunch of marijuana and decide to let you go, or they can decide to take you to jail. You can get caught in an altercation, whether it's a fight or something. The police get there and decide who they're going to arrest and who they're not, who they're going to try and find evidence about and who they're not. And to me, that they have too much power that doesn't get recognized.
Well, the only thing I have to say that I disagree with you on is the idea that the cops shouldn't have the authority. A cop's job never was to be judge, jury, and executioner, and that's what it's become.
For the poor.
Right, for the poor, for where it is now. I mean, if you don't have the money to go to court to fight the tickets or fight the charges, your ass goes to prison.
You plead no contest so you can get out of jail sooner, because the court system is going to give you a lot of years if you fight them.
If you try to fight them, right? And if you can't afford the right lawyer, you are fucked. It's either you gamble it all, or you walk into it with a certain degree of I'm fucked and just better take it as I can.
I'll take the plea bargain, make it stuck on my record forever, even if I didn't do it, so I can get out of jail in 6 months instead of 5 or 10 years.
But what I was getting at is, and this does come from, my grandpa being chief, I think it was chief of police in Memphis or some shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I was brought up seeing the cop side of stuff, more until we were kids, you know what I mean? But the cop's job isn't to decide who's guilty or innocent. It's his job to get you in front of a judge. It's to stop whatever trouble is going on, to resolve whatever conflict temporarily before you can go to a judge and have the issue permanently resolved.
Going in front of the judge is dead. Once you're in front of the judge, if you don't have X amount of dollars to bond out, you sit there indefinitely. Your life is ruined regardless.
Right, you're fucked. And the reason why it's gotten to the point to where the cops can make that choice is because it's gotten so dangerous for them. In a way, the war on drugs has made it to where it's given the cops the authority to do exactly what you said. Fuck a poor person in the ass for the rest of their life with no consequence to them whatsoever. If a cop beats your ass and you don't have the attorney and there's no video footage, you're fucked.
Yeah, in a court of law, his word is greater than yours.
No matter what happens.
They're two human beings, no matter what happened. And when you go to court and the judge asks you, how do you plead? 90% of the people, just from going and being in jail and seeing it, are not saying honestly, I'm not guilty, guilty, or no contest. They are not speaking the truth and honestly. It's almost like you're playing politics when you get in front of that judge. You can't say, I'm not guilty, I didn't do it. You don't say that. You can't speak plainly at all, because I know I was there and I could have won my court case, and I really wanted to just say not guilty. But he would not tell me how much my bond was, and I knew it was going to be more than what I could come up with, so I would be in jail. So I said no contest because he was going to give me 6 months probation and let me out right then. And so I couldn't speak plainly. I was not guilty, but I knew I did not have the money to fight that system. And I'm white, so I know that it's the same for everybody because we've been through it and we've experienced it.
No, and I'm not saying that to discredit anything you're saying. I'm just saying that the way that the system has been perpetuated, especially in modern times, is to this point where the cop is in such... Give you an example. When he pulls a person over, even if he runs your license plate, he really has no idea who the fuck he's going to deal with, If that was you in his shoes, think of the most toughest motherfucker you know, he's going to approach that situation with hesitation just because of previous experiences. People have gotten out of the fucking car and just started shooting. Bang, bang,
That's
bang,
a
bang,
flaw
bang.
in the profession. There should be a breakdown and divide of power because, like, when we get pulled over, what car I'm driving makes me nervous. I have one nice car and one not nice car. I do not want to drive the not nice car because I know if I get pulled over, he's going to look at me a different way. How I'm dressed. Once you get pulled over by the cops, you start trying to make sure you look like a more upstanding person because he judges, not all cops, which
But
is a
the
phrase that's
vast majority.
overused. They're judging you for your stature and your class in society.
Profiling.
They're profiling you every time. So, like, I would so much rather get pulled over with a button up listening to NPR than listening to even rap or sometimes heavy metal and getting pulled over and looking like I just got off work with paint all over me, like I'm a poor laborer and in a crappy car. And maybe the profession, the description needs to be changed because he has that. If you look this certain way, there's much more likely you're going to go to jail and go through that system.
Well, and I think that the idea of probable cause has been so expounded because of the war on drugs. A cop doesn't even need to smell marijuana anymore. If you are acting quote unquote funny or weird, that's probable cause to search your car. And
when you say you don't have probable cause to a police officer, it's an order of contention. And the cop does not take kindly to that.
no, if they say, "Do I need to search your car or go get a warrant?" They expect you to say, "No, go right ahead, officer."
And if you don't say that,
Well,
they intimidate you.
That's when they start with, "Well, I've got probable cause," and then we're coming to what's recently been added: civil asset forfeiture, where they can confiscate anything that you own and say, "Well, we suspect you of being a drug dealer, or we suspect you being involved in illegal activity, so we're seizing this property for as long as we want."
And it's almost like they charge the property as guilty.
Yep.
You have to prove that it's not been used in a crime.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be specific on what crime. They just take it and they say, you prove it in a court of law. It's like the items are guilty upon forfeiture or seizure. And one of the things I was very disappointed with Trump, even though I know he was talking off the cuff, he was sitting at the table with law enforcement, head of law enforcement, the Fraternal Order of Police, and those bigwigs who are usually the faces of the fighting for the police, no matter if they're right or wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, the asset forfeitures thing seems like it might be great.
No.
Let's look into that. He was talking off the cuff. He didn't really know that much because the way the police person explained it to him, as all media was there taking pictures, is that we're taking away the money and the assets drug dealers and criminals have.
Use that power of their empire. Yeah.
And that's, even if you're doing that, you need to do it in a legal way, and that seems immoral and wrong. It does not seem just.
It's an abuse of power. There's no sanctity of property. And when the Constitution was written, it wasn't written as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was life, liberty, and the right to property.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it used to be. The cops
Because
used...
the king won't own your property.
Right, he could take it whenever he wanted if he wanted to be a dick. If you were subjected to a king's rule.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with the cops, though, and even the civil asset forfeiture, it's no longer based on proving innocent until proven guilty. And that's a contradiction in the justice system, the fundamental basics of our justice system.
Even if the charges are dropped, or he gets deemed innocent in a court of law, they still keep the stuff until you can prove the stuff wasn't involved in the crime that the person was already proved innocent of, or charges were dropped for lack of evidence. The cops don't have to produce any evidence or do no work
whatsoever. No, they can confiscate your house, your car, any money that you have in your bank accounts. If they like your power tools and they think that your power tools were used to build a house that you were using to make drugs in, or a shed, they can confiscate that as evidence. It's such an overbearing reach of power that at its core, the very fundamental point of all of this comes from is the war on drugs. It's all been validated and justified because of the war on drugs.
I think it's more than that, though.
Gangs are getting more violent, so we need to arm our police with military-grade equipment to patrol our streets because the gangs are becoming more violent.
I don't think it's all that for sure. I think the war on drugs is just one of the tools in those people's arsenal who are trying to build the power of the police force. Their job is to progress and build and look out for their guys in the fraternal order and push the line as far as they can. And they use the riots and they use any crime that they can see propagated. I see it on just locally, more than just the war on drugs.
The way stuff works with federal or state funding, not federal funding, but state funding, is that different departments get a budget, a yearly budget, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't use that yearly budget that year, the next year it's a smaller budget. But if they go over budget that year, chances are the next year they're going to get a higher budget that compensates for what they lost.
Yeah.
So the police are motivated to be excessive in their spending, to go out and get the most expensive bullets, to get the most deadly weapons that they can possibly have any justification for using. And most of the stuff just sits in a shelf.
And they just say to protect the community, and whenever you're trying to have a real conversation about something like that, there's so many walls and barriers you can't talk about. Almost like when you're talking about racism with black people. It's hard to really have a fully open conversation, the same way it's hard to have a fully open conversation with law enforcement about what really, in quote, is protecting the community and what should be deemed just and usable and tactics and tools they can use from what they can't.
Yeah.
Their arguments are constructed in such a way that it's hard to debate them without them almost getting offended.
Well, they do
or
get
just
offended.
getting.
They get offended, they get upset, and they take it as a personal attack, that you're trying to invalidate their entire career or their entire purpose as police. And when you say stuff like that, they're like, well, what do you want? Do you want just regular people policing your streets? Do you just not want a police force? And that's not what people are trying to get at. And to take